Hello everybody. Today I'd like to talk to you about peer review. Peer review really can be one of the most powerful tools for revision in a class, or even when you go on and work in the business world or have a job. It's quite frequent that employers will require you to do peer review before you will submit documents outside of the company. I know that my sister worked for a company where no document could leave the office until at least 3 people had looked at it and reviewed it. So it's a pretty common thing, and it's an important thing for you to do well. One of the things that I find is that students frequently have kind of a poor perception of peer review, and that's largely because they have not been well trained in how to do peer review. So they pass papers around, they'll come to class with their paper and they'll trade papers, and one person will try to fix the grammar of the other person, and they might offer 1 or 2 little comments, but they really won't offer real productive commentary for change. So that's one of the things I'd like to talk about today. How can you go about offering real productive commentary that will help the person have a better document in the end? The first thing that you need to do when looking at peer review is to think about the things that you shouldn't do. So if the goal of peer review is to get the writer to change their paper for the better, one of the most important things you need to do is not be rude or mean. If you hurt their feelings, then they'll probably step away from the paper and they won't do any more work on it, and that will result in you failing in your task, which was to help them get an idea of how they can fix their paper to make it better. So, I don't want you to be critical when you critique their paper. Another common problem, extremely common problem, is to be overly nice. You're almost so afraid that you're going to hurt their feelings that you're just too nice. You say, "Oh, this seems fabulous." And a lot of times maybe even students don't put a lot of thought into how could they fix the paper. They just go, "Well, that looks good. It's all good." But that really isn't very productive either. Again, if you just say, "This is really nice, I can't see anything that you could make better," you really aren't leading them to any kind of constructive change. So that's not a good strategy either. Another thing that can happen if you have a writer who's really skilled at writing, someone who maybe has a talent for writing, they can kind of be a little superior when approaching someone who maybe isn't as talented as them. It's important to remember that everyone in a writing class comes with different skills. Some people are better writers because they have more experience, or they've had better training, or because they just are more talented in that area. Everybody has areas of talent, and we certainly want to honor every student that walks into a classroom, no matter how good they are, and our goal is to help make them better. If they have a lot of learning to go before they will become an excellent writer, that's okay. That's why they're here. So don't act all superior. Respect and help them look towards the next step in their process. Don't use words like interesting. Interesting could either be interpreted as, "Oh, that's interesting," like, "That's really nice, I'd like to learn more," or, "That's interesting," like, "Wow." Don't use that kind of a word because it's too general. It doesn't really tell the writer anything valuable. Good peer review, like good writing, is always very specific. And finally, you are not ever in this class to edit for someone else in this class. And by edit, I mean fix their spelling, fix their grammar, help them get a different word choice. Those things are not the purview of a peer. That's the kind of thing that I do when I work with the student, and I think it's best if I do it for them. In addition to that, if you fix all their grammar, they're not going to learn how to fix the grammar themselves, and they will walk away from the writing class without really having the skills they need to be able to take care of their own work. So I don't want you ever to edit their papers. Instead, we're going to use a framework called I heard, I noticed, I wondered. I find this framework to be useful because it's very flexible and it can be used with almost any kind of writing when you're doing peer review. So let's go through the concepts of I heard, I noticed, I wondered. I heard. When you very first look at the piece, You need to tell the writer what you understood that they were trying to say. Why is this useful? Well, I'm sure all of us have had experiences where we had something in our mind that we wanted to say in our paper. But then when we actually wrote it down, somewhere something got lost in translation. A lot of times a writer won't see when that's happened to them because they had it in their mind. And mentally, when we read our own work, we tend to fill in the gaps. So one of the most useful tools that a peer reviewer can do is tell the person, summarize in your words, what you understood that writer to be saying. Okay? The next section is called I Noticed. And at this point, you need to find something in the piece that is powerful, that is compelling, that is interesting. Something that stands out and that you think shouldn't be changed. It's always good to give a writer a good idea of what really worked for you. Finally, I wondered. And this can be one of the most challenging things to do as a peer reviewer. And that is to offer some suggestions for constructive change. This is usually in the form of questions. Questions are a very powerful tool for revision. So this is where I wondered if you could do X. If you're struggling with how to do this part of the peer review, I would say the first thing you need to do is go back and look at the assignment sheet and put their paper up against the assignment sheet and say, did they fulfill the assignment exactly as the teacher has described it? And that would be a great place to say, I noticed that the teacher had this part as part of the assignment sheet, and I wondered if you could include that in your paper. Okay? I'm going to go through a couple of examples based on this assignment. It's an assignment I gave in English 102 in the fall of 2012. And it's pretty similar to the assignment that you will get at the beginning of this course. So here we have the assignment. Write one paragraph response to Herbert. Construct an argumentative paragraph that responds to Herbert's charges and to his call for a resurrection of the American dream by agreeing with him, disagreeing with him, or both agreeing and disagreeing with him. This paragraph should demonstrate an understanding of the paragraphing concept I taught in class. It should have a clear topic sentence that takes a position. It should describe Herbert's position. It should offer evidence from your experience, and it should explain how your evidence supports your position. It must be correctly documented. For information from the text, you should have in-text citation in the form of a parenthetical reference like this, and I demonstrate how it has Herbert 566, so the author's last name and the page number in parentheses. It should also include a works cited page with the following MLA formatted bibliographical reference, and I actually provided them the bibliographical reference just like I did for you, so they could copy and paste it out of the assignment sheet. So here's one example of a paragraph that a student wrote for that assignment. The America today is a pit that is endless compared to the America back in the 50s, where a middle-class citizen was able to own a home and purchase a new vehicle every few years while going on vacation every year with their family. Today, it's all about working to barely scrap by, which is what Bob is saying as well. Nothing is improving in the economy. If anything, I feel it is worse than ever. I attended classes this morning, and 4 hours later on my way home, I noticed gas went up from $3.79 to $3.83. Why is it that wages stay still, but yet cost of living is skyrocketing to where it is nearly impossible to live a life outside of work? It's no wonder why the economy is in such a bad state. If no one has money to spend, then there is no money being put back into the economy, so all of the Americans are basically in a forever lasting debt of life. I blame the government for not handling this recession sooner and letting the non-wealthy suffer. My parents are upside down in their mortgage, and their interest rate is at a 6%, and they pay $1,200 every month. No one is willing to help them lower their rate or give any sort of relief. They are at a brink of foreclosure. It's no wonder why there are so many houses for sale for so cheap. No one can afford to buy a home and actually keep it in a good stance. I was born into a poor family, and today we are back at the beginning. They have better paying jobs now, but of course everything in life goes up in price. America is now a place of struggle and a country that will failing. The only dream Americans have now is for someone to stop them from falling in the pit. Okay, there is the reference that I told that student to include. So I'm going to go through and model some responses that you could have to that student. So I'm going to start with I heard. And here is the things that I heard from that student's paragraph. You stated that the American economy is not what it was in the 50s. You used an anecdote about gas prices to illustrate that prices are skyrocketing. You used an anecdote about your parents' mortgage. You stated that they make more money than they used to, but are sinking further into debt. You blame the government for not handling the economy better. In the I noticed section, I say to the student, I liked how specific and powerful your anecdotal evidence was. For example, this sentence really brings home your point that the prices are rising in what seems to be an arbitrary manner. I attended classes this morning, and 4 hours later on my way home, I noticed gas went up from $3.79 to $3.83. Finally, in the I wondered section, I want to get the student to think about ways that they can change the paragraph and make it stronger. So I said, after reviewing the assignment, I noticed that the instructor clearly asks you to respond to Herbert's charges. It asks you to agree or disagree with him. What is your position on Herbert's argument? Can you include some quotes from Herbert that can support your position? Do you think that your tone might be off-putting for your instructor? So I addressed the fact that the tone of the piece was particularly almost confrontational and angry. And it's frequently, it's very typical for students to feel angry about a topic like the American Dream because often they feel like they're not getting a part of that. But it's important to maintain a good academic tone. So I mentioned that. There was certainly a number of other places that I could have gone in the I Wondered section. I could have talked to the student about the fact that they referred to Herbert as Bob, and we don't refer to scholars by their first name when we talk, when we write a paper. I could have mentioned that there's almost no summary of Herbert in this piece. So there's a number of directions I could have gone, but this is the direction I chose to go. Okay? Here's another example of a paragraph that I got in response to that particular assignment. So, the American dream is dead. The opportunities to achieve basics such as home ownership and securing a job that will support a family are becoming more and more out of reach. America's education system is failing, and without quality education, America will fall even more behind in the global market. Government spending is being reduced in education services, while military spending continues to spiral out of control. If Americans continue to be apathetic about speaking up about cuts in education and taking a stronger interest in making a change, I feel our country's future will be very bleak, and the American dream will be just that, only a dream. Okay, and they did, of course, include the bibliographic reference. Do notice that they also did a good job with the in-text citation there. So, I'm going to talk about what I understood this student to be saying. I saw that you clearly outlined the areas that are most at risk in the American system: the economy, education, military spending, and voter apathy. And then I noticed you clearly took a position on Herbert's essay. I like that you linked these problems to voter apathy. And this is something that I think really wasn't brought up a lot in the responses, so I thought that was kind of a unique take that this student had. And if the student had spent a little more time with that, this paragraph would have been a lot stronger. And then finally, in the I Wondered section, we were taught the topic sentence evidence explain paragraphing technique in class. The assignment clearly states that you should offer evidence from your experience. I wondered if you could add some specific evidence from your experience that would give your topic support. You quote Herbert about education. Could you fully explain what he meant by that quote by summarizing what he said for the reader? So here we're not really trying to fix everything in the piece. That's the big point I want you to come across, want you to get, is that peer review doesn't always take the paper from, say, an instant redo and put it in the A category. Peer review really just needs to nudge that writer further along on the pathway. So don't take this as, I need to fix this person's paper. Just ask them some questions that will help them adjust the content to be more in line with what the assignment asks for.